This is no different whether it was Doug Jones or Tommy Tuberville or a Democrat or Republican. The real test here is, do we honor the Constitution of the state of Alabama, or is it just something we roll out when it's convenient?
Hey there. You thought we were leaving for good, didn't you? But no, every time we leave, we keep coming back. It's your favorite political podcast. It's Alabama Politics This Week with Josh Moon and
David Person, who is not on the beach.
I'm not on the beach either. It's just behind me. It's, it's
close enough.
It's there. It's it's one of those things, it's sometimes more agonizing than anything else. Because, we come down, spend time with the family, let my daughter play with her cousins and the grandparents and everybody and hang out for a few weeks. And my wife and I work from here. And so many of our days are spent longingly looking out windows at beaches, and watching kids frolic and play and have the time of their lives.
Just to be clear, you're not complaining, right?
Oh, no. Because listen,
very good.
Listen, I'm doing the same work that I would have been doing at the house. You know what I mean? So,
I was just going to say.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say, now, if you're complaining, you can come here and work, and I'll switch places with you. That'll be okay. I'll work down there. That'll be fine.
I understand. No, I'm not complaining. I just want everybody to understand that this is not. I don't want people to just hate me because of the whole thing here. This is not just I'm on the beach for 3 weeks or whatever it is. That's just not the case. God, listen, the weekends are nice. The weekends are lovely. Don't get me wrong. You roll out and you're right there, and we know we're very lucky to be here and to have the opportunity to do all that. It's fantastic. But yeah, man, there are some days where it is just agonizing though, to look out and it be sunny and mid 90s with 100% humidity, and you think, oh, what a great temperature that would be to get out in the sun and play out there, and but
so
I'm inside.
And you have to tell all the little kids to come knocking on the door. No, Josh can't come out to play.
That's pretty much what happens. Yeah, I had to do that yesterday, as a matter of fact. No, I'm sorry, I can't play softball on the beach with you guys. We can't do it. Hey, before we get rolling here and get started back with this week and what's happening with Tommy Tuberville, which is all anybody seems to talk about anymore, we do need to tell you about the fine folks who sponsor this program and make it go round. That is the folks over at Wind Creek Entertainment. We really appreciate them, all they do for us here and what they do for the state. They sponsor us. I've said it 100 times now. They're the best sponsors ever because they never ask for anything. We got to call them to say, hey, what? Is there something else you'd like for us to talk about? They just say, no, listen, y'all are doing great. Keep up the good work, and we move along with our business. And you know what? That's kind of how they operate in general in the state. They run a number of different businesses around the state of Alabama, including 3 fantastic resort casinos in Wetumpka, Montgomery, and Atmore. Go and visit them. I'm telling you, if you're looking for the last couple of weeks, school's coming up. They've taken August from the kids. They're trying to get July, you're getting those last beach trips in. I'm telling you, on the way down, the way back, break up that trip. Get in there, go into Atmore, go into Wetumpka, break up the trip, stay overnight, have a little fun with the kids at the pool, at the resort pool. You and the wife go up for the massages at the spa. I'm telling you, you will not regret it. Just check them out. They're right off the interstate in Atmore, right in Wetumpka there. You're on your way over, and coming up on football season. So, you know what? If you're going to stay, you got to stay somewhere. Might as well stay in Wetumpka at the casino, right? So head on over. You will not regret it. Look them up online, Wind Creek Entertainment. Just book a room and book some nice amenities. Matter of fact, we sent some folks down a couple of weeks ago, and man, they just raved about the whole thing, about the whole experience. And this was not a special treatment sort of thing. This was it was just a normal, ordinary deal, and it was fantastic for them. So, all right. We are a day removed. We record on Wednesdays, as you know, and we're a day removed from the Alabama Supreme Court issuing an order stating that it would somewhat expedite the residency challenge facing Tommy Tuberville. And a lot of people have been a little bit confused about exactly what that means, if anything at all, for the case. I don't think it means much. First of all, they didn't expedite it a whole hell of a lot. We're still running up way past the deadlines to replace Tuberville on the ballot, should it come to
Right.
that. That's the other thing,
Right.
is this thing is not the case itself. This is simply whether or not the case can be heard in court. Now, I mean, it's important because if the Supreme Court allows this case to move forward, then we start with discovery. And I have said, throughout this, having covered the David Cole case, discovery in a real court case is where Tommy Tuberville, I think, starts to have some real trouble. Because that's when he's going to have to turn over things like the water bill for that home in Auburn, whether he's going to have to go through a deposition that's administered by, an attorney on the other side, and set for the full length of questions. His wife will probably have to go through a deposition as well, probably his son, probably some of the neighbors. And so I think that is where you get into the meat of this thing and whether or not he actually can meet that 7-year deadline.
Right.
But right now we're just determining whether or not there is standing for a court to hear this. Montgomery Circuit Court Judge Brooke Reed dismissed the case. There was a motion to dismiss, and she granted that motion by Tuberville's lawyers, Joe Espy, who we are efforting. I talk to Joe about once a week and I want him to come on. And I've also going to extend an offer today to another one of Tuberville's consultant folks, and to Tuberville himself, if he would like to come on this program and talk to David and I about his vision for being governor, the residency issues, whatever it may be. I'd like to talk to them about that and get his. We've talked to Doug Jones, really impressive.
Number of times, yeah.
Yeah, and so listen, I think it's fair that we give Tuberville and his crew the same shot.
But he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna do it. But I think you're right. We should give him a shot. But I don't think. he's gonna do it.
I think some of his people may be willing. And so if that's the case, we'll do that. And I don't know. We'll see what what Tuberville would like to do. But yeah, I'd like to hear from him. I'd like to pose some questions. And you know how David and I handle things. You see it. We don't treat people poorly. We've had Republicans on this thing. We allow them to speak. It's an exchange of ideas, question and answer, and we don't get into screaming matches with people most of the time.
No.
I mean, I think I had close with Randy Kelly one day, but I mean, I think he was trying that. So,
I think we'll be respectful, but I think we'll be suitably skeptical.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. And I don't think that's what he wants. I don't think he wants to be in an environment where people are skeptical and people are asking questions that are not either fawning or that are capitulating in some way to his point of view. But look, let me get to something here that I think is essential, which is, after all is said and done, based on the very fine reporting and analysis that Bill Britt did in his piece for Alabama Political Reporter, which I commend to everyone, that I think they should read if they really want to get a good understanding of where this case is and what the implications are. Based on Bill's reporting and analysis, I concluded this seems to be something that in the final analysis is not going to mean anything if Tuberville is indeed elected, because he's going to be on the ballot. I think that's a foregone conclusion based on the timeline that has been laid out by virtue of this, the decisions that have been made so far, and the automatic agenda that is set, and schedule that is set. So he's going to be on the ballot, in my opinion. I think that's virtually indisputable. Yeah. And then if he's on the ballot and if he's elected, then what?
Yeah.
Then what happens?
Well, at that point, the court case goes away. Okay, if the court case has not come to a conclusion, then he is going to be elected. And I think at that point the court case has to stop. At least that's according to the conversations I've had with attorneys, including Barry Ragsdale. That this court case, this quo warranto challenge, will stop, and then it moves into the other. Assuming somebody else files a challenge, it then goes to the post-election challenge, and of course, whoever does that, if assuming this case moves forward. They can use all of the discovery and all of the things that are there. And so then that post-election challenge moves forward. And it then has the opportunity to go before the state legislature, who can then have him removed from office if they choose to do so. Although, I have said all along that is of all the things that are the most unlikely, that's the most unlikely, because we saw how they were handling the David Cole case, and they took the position of, listen, the voters voted for this man. They knew this stuff beforehand. They still voted for him. We're not going to remove a duly elected person from office. And I think that's the same position that they'll take with Tuberville. However, I will say there remains a number of questions, just like with Cole, in terms of legal issues that could arise from this thing for Tommy Tuberville and his wife. And, and so I'm not saying that there are, but, having covered David Cole, honestly, that was the last thing I expected, was for the Attorney General of the state to come in and prosecute David Cole for voter fraud. And so I think if you get into discovery in a post-election challenge, well, there could be, and let's say they determine that Tommy Tuberville does not have residency in the state of Alabama, and he's voted here several times. Well, what do you do with that? I think his case is much different and much more nuanced than David Cole's, because of where he was, who he was representing, the fact that there was property here in the state, and how voting laws kind of work from state to state. So that's different than what David Cole did voting out of his district. And so I think there's a lot of things that could upset that little thing. But I do still think there's a risk there for him. Now, I don't know. I don't know where we get to with this, in terms of that. And look, I'll say the same thing, though. If this thing moves forward, people forget. There's a whole lot. Yeah, it may be that that Tommy Tuberville survives this and stretches it out through the election before the case can be properly heard. But at the same time, if they're still going through the discovery process, and a lot of those things are being made public, the fact that, let's say this is a complete hypothetical. I have no evidence that any of what I'm about to say is true or untrue. Okay, let's say they subpoena documents, and he has to turn over bills from the house, and those bills show that basically there was no water used there for months at a time, and that his car is registered at his home in Florida, or again, completely hypothetical, not making it. And then they go through a deposition in which his wife or him admits that like David Cole, I've never spent a night in the place. Well, that hits the public realm. What does that do to both the legal aspect of this and to the voters' opinion of Tommy Tuberville?
Well, I don't think it changes the voting, what's going to happen with the votes at all, because I think there's been enough of this swirling around for years that I don't think the people that are Tuberville voters, which is the vast majority of Republicans in Alabama, I suspect, they're not going to do anything different. So the only thing that would be left is, in my opinion, what kind of legal recourse is there when you have, and at this point we're talking about, we're assuming that he'll be elected, which he may not be, but let's just assume that he is elected.
He's the front runner.
If he's elected, if he's elected, then I think the challenge that the legal recourse that's available is going to be, I think, probably not, I'm going to say drastically diminished in terms of the potential outcome for him to be removed, even with a preponderance of evidence that he's not a resident. And I think I think that's what is extremely frustrating, is that it appears to me as though looking down the long hallway here, I don't believe that this is going to be, that this particular process, this whole question of of the whether or not this is even eligible for consideration. I don't think that's going to be resolved before the requisite deadlines are hit. So that means he'll be on the ballot. I don't believe that Alabama Republicans are going to not vote for him regardless of what comes out in discovery. So the question is going to be, can Doug just flat out beat him, at the ballot box? I think that's the only hope we have. Because if he can't beat him at the ballot box, then once if he gets into office, then I think he's going to be there. He's not going to, at least for one term, he's going to be there.
Yeah. Listen, I don't necessarily disagree with you at all. I was simply just laying out some of the scenarios that could happen. And listen, all of those are very long shot scenarios. Okay, let's be clear; those are very long shot scenarios. I will say, though, one thing. While I read the piece that Bill wrote as well, and in that, he mentioned these deadlines for placing him on the ballot. If the case is finished between August the 28th and November the 3rd. Let's say sometime in October, the Supreme Court or the court somewhere rules that Tuberville is ineligible to serve as governor over the residency issue. Well, then he remains on the ballot, and they disallow votes for him. That's how that works. So he would not be. Basically, they would hand the election to Doug Jones, which is why I think it's unlikely that that's going to happen.
Okay, let's repeat that, review that again. You said
so. So I think it's August the 19th. I think is when candidates have to be submitted. If they're going to make a change, that by August the 19th they have to submit those to the Secretary of State's office, and I believe August the 24th it has to be finalized.
Right.
And so if they miss that deadline. If nothing happens like we expect, and the Republicans don't replace Tommy Tuberville before that deadline, then he does go on the ballot. But if the case continues on, okay, so that doesn't end the case. So the case then continues, and the actual deadline for the case is November the 3rd when people start voting, and so. If that case is decided in between August 19th and November the 3rd, and it's determined that Tuberville is ineligible to serve as governor, he stays on the ballot, and all the votes for him are disallowed. So,
that's based on the Constitution.
Yes, that's based on. I mean, there's no way to replace him, and if you look up what an ineligible candidate, my understanding is it's the same as a dead person being on the ballot, someone who dies in between the time when they're certified and the ballots have to be completed and the election date. It's the same exact process. You can't take them off the ballot at that point. So,
well, if that scenario, that's an interesting scenario. If that plays out, that he is basically, it's like, as you're saying, voting for a dead person.
Mm-hmm.
But if he gets more votes, I think that's going to create another legal problem, because I know if I were Tuberville and that happened, I would absolutely contest any efforts to nullify the votes. Now maybe I wouldn't prevail, but I would absolutely push that thing to the limit. If I won,
I mean, it would have to go to to the Supreme Court and the whole deal over this, and I'm sure that would be the case. Unless it's like a deal where it's just so completely obvious, to everybody that there's no way around it, but. Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I'm sure that that's what he would do, and that they're going to fight it to the bitter end, and they have plenty of money to do so. I mean, he's got $9 million sitting in his account right now, and he can pay that to the attorneys all day long, and that puts up a lot of fight, man. I still, and look again, that is to me the ultimate long shot. I've heard all these rumors that, these people on the Supreme Court are taking this seriously, that they really want to hear it, that they have, that this is something that's going to set precedent for years. And look, I got to be honest, to me, the idea that a judge would say that the court has no standing to rule on the constitutional eligibility of a candidate is insanity to me. I mean, I don't understand how in the world anyone would ever determine that there has to be some process in here between these, partisan parties. I mean, let's just say it's the Democrats. I mean, would any Republican out there trust Joe Reed, to rule, fairly against a Democrat? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
No, they wouldn't.
Right.
Rightly or wrongly, they would not. And so once you move past that very partisan process of those hearings, and we all saw the flaws that took place with the Tuberville hearings, well, then the only other remedy is the post-election challenge, which is heard by the legislature. And so nowhere in there is a court set to determine the eligibility required under the Constitution of our candidates. And to me, it just seems crazy. And I mean, I don't think they'll do it. I think what they'll do is run out the clock. I think they'll allow the clock to be run out and allow this thing to just continue to hang out there. And then you're right. It just comes down to whether or not Doug Jones can beat Tommy Tuberville at the ballot box. And
I think that's our hope. That's our
yeah.
hope.
I mean that's our feelings here. We're not. We don't align ourselves with Tuberville's thinking on things, on pretty much any issue. Although I will say that the comments he made about the prisons a couple of weeks ago were, I thought, were spot on, and I thought were a huge step in the right direction for the state, for the prisoners, for the state.
Well.
Okay,
the rhetoric was I agree with you that the rhetoric was fine, but what I didn't get a sense of, and maybe, and I know we gotta wrap this segment up, but what I didn't get a sense of was what's the vision, what's the actual plan,
right?
We're
Well,
all
it's a
in
problem with
agreement
all
that the prisons
Republicans,
are
right?
a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem with all Republicans. They just say random shit, and you're supposed to just take them at their word, and you see where that gets us into a never-ending war and no Epstein files. And so, but to me, and this is the point I've made a number of times now. Because I wrote about, I praised Tommy Tuberville, and God forbid, my liberal friends came out of the woodwork to ask if I had been hit over the head, and I get it, but I understand. But to me, saying that some of their asses are going to be put in the same jails that they're now over is a change of tone and rhetoric for the guy who's the Republican nominee, is the front runner for governor. That is a change in tone and rhetoric about the prison system in Alabama that we have not seen from anybody in such a position of power. And I think that is hugely important, because now it's tough to get that back in the bag, man. It's tough to now say, oh, well, everything's fine, don't worry about it. No, I mean, you've now said that you recognize that there are problems, and some of these people may need to go to jail. There are jailable offenses out there for what is, for what's happening in our prison. And I think that is a hell of a shift in rhetoric over this thing, where we've got Kay Ivey, who's put her name on a prison, and we've got Steve Marshall running around telling everybody who bitches about our prison deaths, rightfully, that, it's just soft on crime liberals that are causing these problems, while the Trump DOJ is suing them over this stuff. Right. I just think that it is, I thought it was a good thing for him to say that. Now, you're right. It's razor. It's an inch deep. It's an inch deep. Okay, but to me, just the change in rhetoric is very, very meaningful. And I think from that we can maybe make some progress. And listen, I'll say this. Matter of fact, I told one of the people in his camp this: if that man is going to work to clean up our prisons, I'll help in any way I can. I'll help do that, because that is a change of lives. That is saving human beings.
No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
think-
am not
think
going
we
to
ought
discourage him at all in that.
No. I agree with you on that. I mean, if he actually is going to do more than just say what sounds like the right thing, if he's actually going to do something, then yes, I'll be right alongside you, trying to do whatever I can through this podcast or some other means. But again, I I was born in Missouri, so
Right.
show me.
Yeah, it wasn't last
Show
night
me.
either, right? Wasn't last night.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. No. Listen, I completely understand that. I completely get it. And look, I know you said you thought we had to go, but as far as I know, we don't have a guest here yet. So we got some time if you to discuss this, because I just and this is another thing, and we can take this up after our guest as well. I don't know if you followed the whole story with the prison health care contract, Yes Care, and Chris England's fantastic job he did on breaking that thing down. And and we were involved a little bit as well, and I wrote a couple of things about it. And man, somebody's got to do something here. Okay, somebody's got to do something, and it's costing us so much money to be terrible. Okay, if it were costing us a lot of money, and you were saying, yeah, but look how good our prisons are. That's one thing. Or there's no excuse the other way. I mean, it just, there's no excuse the other way. There's no way to run a bad prison cheaply. You can't do it. You cannot do it. You cannot run a bad prison cheaply. And it just, I understand, but somebody has got to do something, man. It is.
No, I agree. I agree. It's a crisis. It's been a crisis.
Yeah.
We just had, I think it was earlier this week that we just learned that another prisoner has been beaten to death.
Yep.
And it's being, in fact, they've actually charged, I think they've charged and named the 4 prisoners who were allegedly involved in killing this person. They've got it on video. It's a problem. There's no question. I mean, it's got to be addressed. And I hope Tuberville does something if he is elected. I know Doug has said he wants to do something if he's elected. And I love the fact, and I'm glad you brought up Chris, our friend Chris England, because he took a very strong stand in that committee meeting and just said flat out, we are not going to issue a contract to this law firm to continue basically to do what has already been done to the state of Alabama, which is to take our money and accomplish nothing in terms of addressing the problems that are in our prison system. So, kudos to Chris England, and it's got to be addressed. I agree with you.
Yeah, it does. And it is a, God, it's such a mess, man. I mean, every aspect of it is a mess. I mean, you have the prison, the violence among the inmates that's rampant, and the things that aren't being stopped, and the extortion and the things that take place. You have drugs entering by way of the guards in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
We know this because they were getting in during COVID when only the guards were coming and going. And look, I think a big part of that is the fact that we don't pay the correctional officers a good wage. All right, because if you have a job in which you have a career and a good pay and a good pension or good retirement benefits and great benefits in terms of health care, you're not risking that on the side. A handful of will. There'll be 5% or so of people that will, but
I think
but not
that's
overall.
That's a good excuse for people who choose to do that. But there are plenty of people, hardworking people in this state and in this nation who are not getting paid what they should be, but they're following the rules. They're not jeopardizing people's lives. So I don't give them a pass on that.
Oh, I'm not giving them a pass.
I'm not saying you are. And I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you are. But I'm just making it crystal clear that I don't accept that as a justifiable rationale for being for drug trafficking in the prisons. It's just flat out wrong. There's no excuse for it. I don't care what they're being paid. If they don't like what they're being paid, then doggone it, they need to find another job rather than doing that.
No, I do not disagree with you. I was directing that towards the folks who are hiring and the people setting the budgets for the state. I think we've cut it, like police officers. The problem that everybody has now in hiring cops. You'll be surprised to learn it's not just in Montgomery. We can't hire state troopers. We can't hire anybody all of a sudden. And the reason for that is they've got the hell out of their pay. It used to be, you went to be a cop there, you could live on a cop's salary. You could rely on the pension that came after 20 years to support you, in whatever endeavors you went into. Even if you wanted to stay a police officer and make and serve the community like you always have been. Now you can't. You can't anymore. It has not kept up with anything, and Republicans largely have killed the pensions and benefits programs, despite the police unions, and the police unions are still backing these dudes for whatever reason. That is why you can't. If you pay people a proper wage, you're going to get good people who want to keep the job, who want to excel, who want to keep moving up, who want to hold on to that job with both hands, and they're not going to put themselves at risk or bounce around all over the place. We've got to get back to some of that, okay, in the correctional officers and in hiring cops. And if you do that, then I think it makes a sea change within those prisons in and of itself. We should have done that instead of building a $2 billion prison. That's what we should have done.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with you that there needs to be, people need to be paid a wage that makes sense for that kind of work. That's hard work. It's dangerous work. They need to be paid, compensated fairly, for that, and not undercompensated. But I also think this has a lot to do with who is being recruited. I still maintain that the recruitment needs to be the standards, the criteria needs to be raised, because I just don't believe that even regardless of what people are being compensated, if their rationale is that they need to become a criminal, basically, and not just a criminal who's doing stuff like is done on the street, but that people are going to be dying because of what the decisions that you make. I'm sorry, that's not the caliber of person that we need in our prisons.
Right. Well,
we don't need
to me, it's Chick-fil-A versus McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? It's Costco versus Sam's. You know what I mean? If you want a better quality employee, you pay the people what they're worth. You put up a wage that's out there, and you attract the better employees that are more focused on their lives and are more responsible people. And if you don't, you're left with folks who are going to do exactly what we're talking about here. They're not the top. They're not the cream of the crop. And listen, I'm not saying we need to break the bank, and now all of us go hungry because we need to. But I am saying there was a time in this state, in this nation, in which we paid police officers and firefighters and those guys a living wage that they could rely on to live, not just get by, but live a decent life where they could go on vacation with their families and afford a car. And a lot of their wives didn't work at times. I know it's a different time now, but and things have adjusted to a 2-income home now. That's where the pricing is for things. I get that. I understand how the economics of it work, and I'm not saying that we got to pay them enough so their wives can all quit their jobs. But what I am saying is we've gone so far below that now that you're not going to get guys going out and risking their lives in to be a police officer in major cities for $50,000 a year and a benefits package that they could get working at Chick-fil-A. Seriously,
Sure. No,
you know what I mean? We've got to do better we've got to
Yeah.
do better with these folks.
Well, two
So-
things can be true at the same time. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it comes down to. Both
Yeah.
things need to happen.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And hopefully, whether it's Tuberville or whether it's Doug Jones, hopefully we'll be able to move in that direction to save lives and quite frankly, to save Alabama money, because these lawsuits and the the penalties that come with operating things the way we are, it costs the state money.
Yeah, 60 some odd million to one attorney since 2020. So, I mean, we could have spent probably half of that if we would have compensated the guards properly and done things a little better. But all right, I'll tell you what, let's slide out. We'll come back here in just a minute. It's Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wing Creek Entertainment. We're back in a moment. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person, and we are happy to have back with us Editor-in-Chief of the Alabama Political Reporter. It's Bill Britt. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Josh. David,
Yeah,
always
man.
good to see you.
Good to see you, Bill.
It's nice. It's nice. When we had you on last time, your segment was one of the best ones we've had in terms of numbers and stuff. So yeah, we should have done this long before now. We didn't know the numbers.
Number of haters or number of likes?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. All that matters is they're clicking, baby. It doesn't matter as long as they're clicking.
That's it.
There you go.
We got you on now, though, because David and I were talking about the piece you wrote for today, which is Wednesday. We record on Wednesdays. We tell everybody what the hell goes on here, because why not? But it was about Tommy Tuberville's residency case, which is not really at this point about the residency case, but more so about whether or not a court has the authority to hear the case.
Right.
And whether or not it can be in court right now, and where we are in terms of deadlines on this thing. And one of the things I brought up to David was the fact that, there is a deadline in terms of whether or not Tuberville can be replaced on the ballot. But that deadline doesn't necessarily end the challenge, because if let's say that challenge continues on, and on October the 20th, the court issues a ruling after the Supreme Court, let's say, again, hypothetical, allows these things to go forward, and then the court rules on October the 20th that Tuberville doesn't meet the eligibility requirements, that means he just gets to stay on the ballot, and all the votes for him are disallowed, correct?
Yeah, that's what it appears to be, because you've got a conflict between when the filings are due, right? The challenger's filing has to be in August 7th. And, then Tuberville's side has 14 days to respond. And the ordinary deadline for the Republican Party to replace somebody on the ballot is August 19th. And you run up against all of these obstacles with the dates. It has to go to the Secretary of State by a certain period of time, 71 days, which, puts it, everything ends up after the court challenge could actually take place. Not this one, but any other remedy could take place. It will be long past when there's a remedy to the problem.
Yeah.
And that is what frightens me. I was going through this all day Tuesday, and it was like kept coming back to me. Yeah, they filed an expedited ruling, but it's not expedited enough for it to have a resolution before the election.
Yeah.
I don't see any pathway there.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way with that. And this is the thing. Listen, in all of his genius, this is one of the things that Ken McFeeters warned everyone about, was that, you're going to run past this deadline of August the 19th to replace him on the ballot. And that's going to butt you up into this dead zone period in which either the clock is going to run out completely because the election is going to happen and the case is going to be over, or they're going to find against Tuberville because it's so obvious, and they're not going to have the opportunity to do so. And so
Right.
the worst possible scenario for the Republicans would be that thing falling in between the election and the cutoff date.
That's the big gamble here for the Republicans. And we've talked about this before. It's always been a big gamble because there's a likelihood, now a slim likelihood, that he could be found ineligible to run for governor, which would demand he come off the ballot. I mean, but they can't take him off the ballot because the ballot is already printed.
Right.
The Republicans have no opportunity to replace him with anyone. And so what ends up happening is all the votes he gets don't count. And Doug Jones automatically becomes governor, not because of anything Doug Jones did, but because the Republican Party, if this is true, failed to vet the candidate thoroughly enough that he ends up on the ballot, be it anyone who votes for him, their vote doesn't count.
Yeah, I said basically it would be like he died. It would be like he died in that period between the ballots being printed and the election.
And this is what the law allows for. If a candidate is otherwise ineligible to run by death or illness or whatever, this is the mechanism. They stay on the ballot, but it doesn't count. We've been anticipating this type of thing, but we really have had little confidence that this could go through in a timely manner because of how late it was, the filings came. But again, and Josh, I know you and David know this as well as I do, they had to wait to file this challenge, and that's the reason it is running up against the deadline, not because of anything the plaintiffs did or anything that even the court did. I mean, the court so far has done their job. It's just the job couldn't start after Judge Reed said she didn't think she had the ability or the authorization to hear the case, even though she said the case should be heard. Yeah. So here we are, butting up against the constitutional deadline without the fundamental constitutional question of whether he's a legal resident ever having been answered. So we could, in fact, end up with a governor, as you said, who after the fact is found to be ineligible to be governor. So do we have to have 4 years with an ineligible governor? I mean, if he is in fact, now he could be eligible, but no one has proven definitively whether he is eligible or ineligible. And that's really the only question before the court should be that, but that's not how courts work.
So Bill, let's game this out a little bit. If assuming that that Tuberville indeed remains on the ballot, which is what I assume will happen, and it sounds like you think that's probably the likely outcome as well, and assuming that he is elected, that he gets the most votes, and I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I do think there's a good chance that that's going to happen.
Right.
I doubt very seriously that he's going to be found ineligible by any Alabama court, but let's just say for the sake of argument that happens. He's in office, he gets the most votes, he's found ineligible by a court.
Well, it wouldn't be a court at that point, it would be the legislature.
Well, thank you, Josh, the legislature. He's found constitutionally ineligible. Which I don't think is going to happen, even more so with the legislature. I forgot that step. Thank you. If I'm Tuberville, I'm going to try to fight whatever that outcome is, and try to pursue push the law as far as I can. What do you see in your mind? Is that a possible? Is that a likely outcome that he would do that? And do you think that? And what do you think the outcome would be?
Well, I if it goes to the legislature, look, the Republicans have a supermajority. They're not going to go in and say you are ineligible, so you have to leave office, and then the lieutenant governor would become governor. That's what would happen. So Tuberville would be removed from office by the legislature. Whoever won the lieutenant governor's race would become governor. That this has been anticipated by the Constitution. This portion has been anticipated. And there's another two little wrinkles in there that I want to bring out. If the Supreme Court follows basic precedent, they would, in fact, send this back to Judge Reed, to the lower court, to hear the case. Depositions, testimony, witnesses, all this. Now, this would still be going on even though the clock has run out. That would still be going on. So it could happen before the election, which in effect is a trial that the state will become aware of. And I and part of me says, well, that will never happen. But a court could actually find him ineligible to run before the election. Now, they're going to fight like hell to keep that from happening, Tuberville's side. But it could happen. Now, there's one other wrinkle, and I'm not a legal scholar, but there is a portion in the Alabama Code where the Supreme Court, and I'm not using exact wording for this, but could claim dominion over this situation. And that is a rarely used, but has been used in the past to say, okay, this is coming to us anyway, so we're just going to take it up now. Now, I don't know if this would be politically risky for anybody on the court. But as Josh has pointed out before, if we start seeing people recused, that could be a ruling. That could be a ruling to say, we're going to take this from here. And that might just, I don't know that it will matter, but that's a wrinkle that's in the Constitution. I don't know that it'll get used. Hey, I have racked my brain 1,000 ways, and I will quote one of the wisest statements I have ever heard. And this is when Andy Liu was looking over at some eagles or something doing various things that eagles do in Colorado. And she looked out and she went, what in the hell? And then she looked at her mother, she looked at her dad and said, I mean, what in the world? So this is the wisdom of Andy Liu applies here. What in the hell? I mean, what in the world? We are in
if you're unaware,
a crazy,
Andy Liu is my
crazy
daughter.
place.
No, I knew.
Yeah,
I was going to point that out. Yeah.
So Andy Liu's, Josh's daughter, has the wisdom of Solomon when it comes to what the hell we're doing right now, because it doesn't make any damn sense.
Yeah. So with all of your thinking about this and all of the, obviously, the research that you've done, and I've already said this in the segment that Josh and I did before you joined us today, but I'm going to say it again. I really recommend that people read your analysis and your reporting. It's very solid, and it gives some real context for what we're dealing with and what we can anticipate. What do you actually think is going to be the ultimate outcome of all of this?
Well, I know. Look, I like the outcome to be that they settle the Constitution, because this is no different whether it was Doug Jones or Tommy Tuberville or a Democrat or Republican. The real test here is, do we honor the Constitution of the state of Alabama, or is it just something we roll out when it's convenient? This is an inconvenient argument that's happening here, of course. It's not pleasant for Mr. Tuberville. It's not pleasant for the Republican Party. But a constitution is not designed to please a party or a candidate. It's designed to uphold the rule of law. This is our law. It says he has to be a U.S. citizen for 10 years, be 30 years old, and a resident citizen for 7 years prior to the election. And that he's a U.S. senator doesn't matter, because the Constitution says all you have to do is be a inhabitant of the state. Now, we can argue about what inhabitant means, but it means he only has to move here for a day or two, and he can run. And there's not even really a time limit on how long it is. But our law is different for our chief executive. And the hopeful outcome is that we will at least settle the constitutional issue, and then this being that a court has a right to hear these challenges, and under what pretext do they get to hear these challenges? And we get these challenges about Tuberville settled, whether it affects the election or not. Because if we're going to claim to be a state of law and order, we must have courts that can render judgment. And in this, so far, we don't know that anybody can render judgment. And thank you sincerely for the compliment. I've worked very hard on this because it is a subject that is important to every Alabamian if they believe in the rule of law. If you believe in the party rule, whether Democrat or Republican, we're all lost, because
right.
A decent society relies on us following the rules. But I don't think that everybody believes that.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. All right, so we'll get you out of here with this. We've discussed this. You know my feelings. I have no optimism that this is going to be settled, that politics is going to rule the day, that the Supreme Court is going to do something. If I had to guess, they're going to just allow the clock to run out, so they never set the precedent on it in this case, and leave themselves a window to come back later and do so. I don't think that they're going to take the stand that they should. Barry Ragsdale, the attorney for the plaintiffs, is going to ask them to recuse themselves. What do you think is going to happen? If you had to predict it right now, what do you think is going to happen?
Fall will come. I think you got about probably a 45% chance of a outcome that clarifies, maybe less, 35%. I think the more likely scenario is that they run out the clock. And I think you got about a 7% chance of the Supreme Court going, no, we're going to take this up and we're going to hear it and we're going to settle it quickly. But again, on the timetable that they've given the plaintiff and the Tuberville team, I don't see how even that would settle the issue before the ballots were printed. But again, my prediction is worth about as much as you're paying for it. I would like to believe, I do believe we have sincere Supreme Court justices that would want to hear this case in a timely manner. I also believe that they are political creatures and do not want to lose their seat on the court. I remain cautiously optimistic because I believe there are people in Alabama who do care about the rule of law more than they care about who's the next governor, whether it's Tommy Tuberville, Doug Jones, or my dog Lucy.
Yeah, I think there are those people as well. I just don't think we elected any of them as judges, and so it's That's a problem. That's a bit of a problem. But man, thanks,
Yeah.
for hopping on and doing this and the story and trying to keep people informed. And as we've told everybody,
Yes.
including the folks over in Tuberville's camp, man, this is not they get so touchy about the whole thing, and it's not a partisan sort of a swap. Listen, that we've certainly made, or I have made my allegiances known to a certain line of thinking on things and certain candidates.
We both
And
have,
I know I'm far more liberal than Tommy Tuberville is, and all the folks in his camp. And listen, they can call me a big lib and woke and all that, and I'm okay with that. But at the same time, there also comes a time when you have to settle all of that stuff aside. And I feel like I could do the same thing if we were talking about the age of a candidate running for governor on the Democratic side, and we've left this up to the Democratic Party to determine. I don't think that's a fair way to do it either. I mean, to me, it's the same argument as gerrymandering. I don't want anybody to gerrymander. I don't want it to be more fair or more advantageous for Democrats. I want you to draw fair lines, and it's the same thing here. I don't want you to boot Tommy Tuberville off the ballot because he's a Republican. I want you to have a fair hearing, let him present his evidence. And I said a little bit in the piece today, I thought that had they not screwed it up, the releasing of the tax returns would have been a pretty big blow to some of the arguments that have been made against Tommy Tuberville not living here. But they screwed it up because they left him unredacted or unredactable. And I think that then cast a lot of doubt about those tax returns. And so I just, I don't know. Like I said, I think it needs to go before a court, and a court hear these sorts of things the same as it would a Democrat whose age is in question, or an independent. And that's the other thing. What happens with a libertarian candidate? Who the hell decides that?
Right.
Who decides an independent candidate's eligibility? How do we challenge that?
That's a good point. I think the thing is, at least most thinking people who actually think about elections and think about fairness, they want this issue settled. I know Republicans want it settled. I know Democrats who want to settle. And those people are not being partisan about it, right? They are sincerely wanting the state to follow the law. And we've said this all along. I have said this many times. To me, it's not about Tommy Tuberville. I mean, he supposedly doesn't like me. I don't know why. He's never met me in my life. And I write things about politicians because I don't pat them on the back very often. I usually, just hold them accountable. That's our job. That is the job of the press. And all we are doing now is trying to hold the state accountable to make a decision on eligibility. That's the real point.
Well, I think you're right, Bill. That is the real point. But I do want to go on the record and say I could care less whether Tommy Tuberville likes me or not. Tommy Tuberville has been a horrible senator, and I think he will be a horrible governor because he's been a horrible senator. I don't like what he stands for. I don't like what he says. I don't like what he represents. I don't want to see him in the governor's mansion any more than I want to see him sitting in the U.S. Senate. But he's there. He got elected fair and square. As far as I know, it was fair and square. So he's there. But I hope we can keep him out of the governor's mansion. He doesn't need to be there.
The problem, and David, look, I'm just trying to be fair-minded about this. And listen, I have my own thoughts. You may love or hate Kay Ivey. She has been a steadying force for the state, for better or worse. But you cannot have
better
a success,
and for worse, I would argue.
Yeah,
for better and for worse.
You cannot have a successful state without steady leadership at the top. And that's what I hear from both Republicans and Democrats. They are worried that Tommy Tuberville will, one, not take the job seriously, two, is not well prepared for the job at all, and three, that he will be a destabilizing force because of the things that he says that are really sort of, in my thinking, very much anti-business. It is certainly not a message you want to send to the world. And this is what worries the people I talk to. And it's not just Democrats. I talk to a lot more Republicans than I
Yeah.
do Democrats. And they
Well,
share that fear.
yeah, and to piggyback on what you're saying, look, I don't support Kay Ivey's politics, but I'd be one of the first ones to say I think she's been stabilizing. I think she has been over the course of her tenure. I think she has been more competent than not. I don't agree with everything she's done, and I don't agree with most of. In fact, I probably don't agree with maybe even most of what she's done. Definitely don't agree with most of what she has articulated in terms of positions. But has she been stabilizing? Absolutely. Absolutely, she's been stabilizing. And I have made no secret of the fact that in terms of my views about the leadership of this state, I think Alabama's had a pretty good run in terms of governors for probably at least 20 some odd years, if not longer. But I think we could turn a corner and go completely in the wrong direction if Tuberville gets in, because he's distinguished himself in the worst sorts of ways. Kay Ivey, even while I have not agreed with her positions on things, at least the way she presents herself and the rhetoric she uses, I think have helped to create this stabilization that we're talking about.
And
Tuberville has not done
absolutely,
that as a senator.
no, he has not. And you don't have to agree with a particular candidate or a governor's policies all the time to
Right.
make to differentiate between whether they were stabilizing force or destabilizing force.
Exactly.
I know y'all just soon boot me off here, but I want to make one more quick point. Think about the fact that if you go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, there was a time where you had what we called New South governors. And what that meant was they were not the old Democratic Party of racism and this kind of thing. They were more about moving their state forward, and everybody. Terry Sanford, if you study history, is one of the greatest. He was governor of North Carolina, and the pro-growth under Terry Sanford was unbelievable for North Carolina, transformed the state. And Alabama has yet to have one of those. Kay Ivey, I think, I really do think that if you look back, Don Siegelman wanted to follow that role model. I think Bob Riley wanted to follow that role model.
Yeah.
I don't think Bentley really had that mindset. But and I think
He
Kay
was
Ivey,
following other things.
yeah, well, broken chandelier, baby. That's all I got to say. Broken chandelier. But you can't. And Governor Ivey has been more, not so much as a New South governor, but she has been a policy driven governor, not a politically driven governor. And so I, I, I give her high marks, and I think history will give her high marks for being that. But again, we still are in quest for a New South governor. Now, do I think Doug Jones could do that? Yes. Would he have a difficult time with the Republican legislature and all the offices? Yes, because the governor has tremendous power over who's on what commission, who gets appointed to be in the cabinet, and the cabinet carries out the agenda. So I do think, and I'm not going to reveal who I have and have not voted for, but I've voted for a lot of Republicans in Alabama. because they at the time were the best choice. But like Josh, I thought, has said this, and you're a smart man. You do this. I'm sure you vote for the best qualified person. And I have not. I just say there's a difference there that could make a difference in the state. Whether you like Doug Jones or hate Doug Jones or love Democrats or hate Democrats, what he's talking about is the kind of things that Alabama has lacked in leadership for the last 20 years. Riley tried it. Siegelman tried it. And the system punished them for trying it. You know what I mean? So that's that's kind of where I see the difference between Jones and Tuberville. Can Tuberville rise to the occasion? You never know with people. Does Jones know what he's talking about? Of course he does. He's not a newbie to this. He's a thinker.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, you never know. You're right. Yeah, I never would have guessed, basically a national championship in 2004 out of Tuberville either. So, that surprised the hell out of me. But, and so I always have that soft spot, being the Auburn fan. But it's still, I've, as I've said here many times, I'm not inclined to dislike Tommy Tuberville. I'm actually inclined to like him. It's a lot of the rhetoric that has led me to dislike what he's done while a senator, and the fact that I feel like he is uniquely positioned to help a lot of people because he understands their plight much better than a lot of folks, having sat in those living rooms and dealt with a lot of kids over the course of his career as a coach. He should understand where those kids are, who they are, who their families are, what their struggles are, how much they fight and claw and scrape and scrap every single day to try to get ahead in this state. And I feel like more could be done from his perspective. And that's the reason why I've been disappointed in him. But, you're right. You never can tell. But one thing's for certain, the Alabama Supreme Court will always disappoint us, and I expect no less of them in this case. So,
it's one of the from Princess Bride, one of my favorite lines is, get used to it. Disappointment. You get used to disappointment.
That's true. Well, hey man, thank you for spending the time with us. We really do appreciate it. We'll get you back on a lot sooner than we have, and have another little chat. I
love what you guys do. You do a great job. I listen to you, and I enjoy the conversation, and your guests are top notch, and I appreciate you including me.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen, top-notch guest. That's what we do. All righty. We're going to slide out. We'll be back in a minute to wrap this thing up. It's Alabama Politics This Week. We're back in a moment. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week, brought to you by Wind Creek Entertainment. Our thanks to the folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for sponsoring us, keeping us going. Thanks to the folks over at SPLC for all the help they have in helping us line up guests and doing the whole bit. Really, really appreciate them and the job they do. And I know while we were on break, they filed some more motions in that nonsensical case that's been filed against them. That's really started now, I think, to embarrass the Trump administration, the Trump DOJ, more than anything else. It's anybody with any objectivity at all looks at that thing and sees that it's an absolute farce. So our congratulations to them on that, and thanks for all the help, and everybody else who follows along and listens and and shares this with everybody and shares the stuff that I post on Facebook and all that. We really, really do appreciate it. We're rolling along pretty well. We get a lot of and listen, I'm going to do something that's going to amaze everybody. Okay, I want to thank the folks over at Yellowhammer News, and over at 1819 News. Okay, and you're thinking, Josh, what the hell has happened to you? You've written something good about Tuberville. Now you're thinking these guys, those guys, Jeff Poore in particular over at 1819, have started picking up our interviews that we do with people and posting them. They have given us full credit. They have posted the things verbatim. They've posted the videos. They've posted links to the podcast. We didn't ask for this, but you know what, I really appreciate them doing so, and you know what, and if you know, we should, if you'd like for us to reciprocate in some way, I don't know how, but maybe we could. But listen, it's I do appreciate them. That of course they're writing stories talking about how crazy we are. I understand that. That's fine. It's still spreading the message. You know what I mean? And all you can ask for in these situations is to have them post the things verbatim and fairly and link back to your stuff and give you credit. That's all you can ask for. Okay, I'm perfectly fine with anybody who wants to criticize. But at least do what they're doing. And I just wanted to put that out there. I really appreciate them taking the time and the effort. I'm not sure who did it at Yellowhammer. They've done it 4 or 5 times now with some of the interviews that we conducted and stuff. And I meant to go back and write down before we started recording today who had done so, because I wanted to tell them that I appreciated the way it was presented, because I do think it was presented very fairly, even though Yellowhammer not as much as 1819, but some of it they were disagreeing with, of course. But that's fine. That's fine. It makes the world go round, right? All right.
Well, yeah, that's and let me just say, what is the old axiom? I can't remember exactly what it is now, but basically it comes down to this: all publicity is good publicity. So,
right, yeah,
if they're gonna repost our stuff, hey, great, wonderful.
Yeah, no, it's to me, I have this is. I'll say this, and you may disagree with me because you're a church going person or whatever, and this may be a different tack than what you take, although I don't suspect that it is. This has always been my argument about the folks who are so fragile as Christians sometimes. If your message is as good as you believe it to be, then it will stand on its own, and you don't need any assistance in that. Okay, so if you believe that the religion that you're practicing is as good as you believe, that you've put your faith into it to that degree, then you shouldn't feel so fragile anytime someone believes differently than you, or sometimes if somebody says that they're not going to force people in schools to read your religious texts, you shouldn't feel that way, because it should be strong enough to stand on its own. And that's the way I feel here. I don't care how you present it on your page. I appreciate you doing it fairly, but as long as you present the full message and the full things that we've said, then you know what, man? I feel like it's strong enough to stand on its own, and it'll hang out there. Either they want to believe it or they don't, and I'm fine with either way. It's America, so
Yeah, and that's my bottom line for religion as well as what we do. It can stand on its own. No, but I don't expect everybody to agree. Really, don't care if everybody agrees or not.
Yeah.
It's just a part of the vibrant discussion that we have in a democracy about a lot of different things, and that's cool. That's okay. Yep. We can disagree. All I would hope is that we can disagree in a way that is agreeable, and that we're not, trying to kill each other or destroy each other over ideas and speech. Right. Yes. That's problematic. No matter what the speech or ideas are, that's problematic. But if we can live in peace with each other while disagreeing, and not impede the other person's ability to live a healthy life, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I feel that way, and everybody has their opinion. Everybody has, what they believe in. Everybody has their role to play on things, and it takes me back to my second favorite quote from the greatest TV show ever made, The Wire, which is, man, the game's the game. The game's the game, and that trails only behind. Sometimes it be that way, Sometimes it be like that. It's my every time we watch something, I'll sort of say to my wife, where he's from, and she immediately, The Wire. Everybody's from The Wire. Everybody on TV today had some role in The Wire at some point. It
was a great show. It definitely was a great show.
Fantastic.
And it gave us one of the greatest actors of our generation, Idris Elba.
Oh, it did. Yes.
Yes. So you gotta you gotta give credit where credit is due. That guy's phenomenal.
Oh,
And then the guy that died, I'm trying to remember with the scar, Michael K. Williams.
Yeah,
Michael K. Williams.
Yeah,
Another brilliant actor.
Yeah,
and
man.
died too young.
Omar. Yeah,
Omar.
Omar coming.
And I'd seen him in a lot of other things too after The Wire, and he was brilliant. Just a brilliant actor.
It was such a great exploration of a city. It really was. It was, and it fit. It touched on so many subtle things that if you were in the news business, or you maybe even in politics, the subtlety of the way so many very frustrating things, and just nuances and really crazy things that happened, the way they hit them and the as they flowed through, it was so good. It was so good. The way the police were focused on the wrong things, and and the bottom cops were fighting the top cops, and and it was just it was so good. I mean, anyways, all right. We got to switch now to something not so good, something that has driven me insane for the last couple of weeks. And she asked to be on, and we maybe we'll get her on. And because honestly, I would have asked today, but I didn't expect to do the show today. So I didn't think about it. And it's Tabitha Eisner, the vice chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. Look, I respect Tabitha.
Wait a minute. Let me just add, I want to make sure I'm understanding something. She reached out to you to be on the show.
She did.
To be on the podcast.
She did. This was a couple weeks ago now. When we were first going into being off. And I said,
so the reason I'm asking you, I get the reason I'm asking you is that somebody on her behalf was talking to me about her being on the show to promote an event that she's going to be on or that she's involved with or something. And I was saying to that person, we already had scheduled, because, we do some booking in advance, or at least we try to. We already have somebody from that event scheduled already. So I was thinking, we don't need to have that person on and her,
right.
So so what you're saying is that she was still trying to get on, and I just find that kind of curious. But go ahead.
I don't know, because I'll say what she. I don't really know what she was reaching out to me about, other than some stuff to do with the party. And I assume it's the stuff, at this point in time, she had also not started posting the things that she's been posting.
Okay.
So, so there's going to be a reorganizing meeting, which I'll tell you this. I agree with Tabitha Eisner on this point, and on a lot of other points. I agree with her on a lot of things, but on this point, we really agree, and that's the fact that Democrats have got to change this. They've got to stop doing this reorganization stuff. A couple of months before the most important election for a party in the state of Alabama. This is nonsense. Do it next year. I mean, you know what I mean? What are we doing here? And so you're not having to worry about this while you're supposed to be out supporting candidates and building coalitions and doing all. It's nonsense. What are you doing? But that's the way they've done it for years, and so that's the way it is, and that's what they're going to do. And so she's taking this time to start posting a lot of stuff about Dr. Joe Reed, who runs the Alabama Democratic Conference, who is who's been heavily involved in the Alabama Democratic Party, basically has controlled it for a number of years. Randy Kelly is his right-hand man. They are in lockstep together on things. And so they've run the show since 23, is that right? 23 now?
Yeah, that sounds about right, yeah.
And so, prior to that, Chris England was the chair for a few years. Then Joe Reed, got Randy Kelly elected as the chair. And so, look, what she started posting, she started with, a check that she said she wrote to Joe Reed for his endorsement from the Alabama Democratic Conference.
I saw that.
Said that it was never deposited anywhere, and so basically she's accusing him of committing a felony, at that point. And now she's got something out about how they distribute the sample ballots, those yellow ballots that they always hand out, encouraging you to vote for Democratic candidates that they have supported at the Alabama Democratic Conference. Said that's electioneering, and they're supposed to be filing certain paperwork with the state, and they're not doing it, and they haven't done it for decades or all that. Why are we doing this now?
Well, isn't it? My assumption is she's doing this. And by the way, I don't agree with what she's doing because I think the timing I don't think it's the right way to handle it. I think the timing is bad. I think it just creates, the party already is prone to chaos, and I think this just exacerbates that. Yeah. But I'm assuming she's doing this because she's trying to lay a foundation for the reorganization, right? She's trying to blow things up as much as she can so that at the reorganization, it'll be less likely, I guess she's assuming or thinking, it'll be less likely that Randy Kelly and Joe Reed will be reelected, right? I mean, isn't that the logical game here?
I don't know, maybe. I think what bugs me about the whole thing is none of it is new. Okay, all of these things have been reported in the past. All of these things have been talked about in the past, and so it seems self-defeating right now for the vice chair of the party to be putting this stuff out about another major player within the party at a point in time when Democrats have their best hope in 15 years of having a very solid election. And in terms of statewide office and legislative gains, they have a very real shot to continue the momentum that they picked up. I mean, we've seen Andrew Snead and Shamari Figures have outraised Republican candidates in their congressional district races in this last cycle. That was a huge cycle. It was not some off cycle. Okay, it was a big cycle for them, and they were able to grab that. There's momentum. They moved Shamari's race to basically a toss up at this point. In CD2, despite them redrawing the lines and trying to steal it from him. Okay, Doug Jones in a lot of polling. I'll tell you this, man. The polling I've seen in our big cities, Tuscaloosa, in every city every county except Shelby, where there's more than 200,000 people, there is a wide gap between Doug Jones and Tommy Tuberville. In favor of Doug Jones, and he was up 5 points in that newly drawn CD2 district down there as well. So that I'm not saying he's going to win. Don't get me wrong about that. I'm saying that there's momentum here that there has not been in a long time for Democrats, and this isn't helping. And as a party vice chair,
right.
That should be your goal, okay? Look, clean up whatever you need to clean up, but there's no reason to be bringing up shit from 10 years ago right now. Stuff that was looked into and reported on and talked about all that time back. There's no reason to be doing that.
Yeah, I don't see how it benefits the party at this point. I mean, I get sometimes that the only way to address things is to take it to the public, but I just don't see how this benefit. My biggest problem is with the timing. It's not even necessarily with. I mean, she's got a right to make her case.
Oh, yes.
And they have a right to challenge her on making her case. I mean, when I say they, I'm talking about Randy Kelly and Joe Reed. But I don't think this is the time for it. I think this just creates more, like I said earlier, more chaos and more division. There's already division, but I think it exacerbates the division. Yeah. And I don't see how it creates an atmosphere, a winning atmosphere, a competitive atmosphere, an atmosphere where people are willing to coalesce and organize in what is going to be, even though we may see some real opportunities here in some of these races, we know it's going to be hard
Yes.
for Democrats to get elected statewide
Yeah.
or in some of these congressional districts. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. We don't need more challenges right now. We need less challenges.
Yes, and she has, you look at Yellowhammer and 1819, the guys I just praised. Look at what I mean. That rightfully they took her stuff from her Facebook post. They took her videos and they've turned them into basically campaign ads against the Democratic Party. That they can't be trusted. It's look at the fraud and abuse that's taking place by the head. You can't trust Democrats, and that's. That's not necessary. And I'll say, man, I've been praising everybody involved on both sides for at least giving the appearance of working together. Because we all know that there is bad blood between Randy Kelly and Joe Reed and Doug Jones and his folks. Okay, we know that. And whoever side you're on, that's the side you're on, whatever. Yeah. But that has been put aside for the last several months, and that has not come up. Even when it could have come up, it didn't come up. Okay, even when some people got really pissy privately, they did not let that flow publicly. All right, they held their tongue. They worked. They got the folks together, and tried to work it out and come to some sort of reconciliation that made sure that while they didn't agree, they didn't push it out in the public, and there wasn't this infighting that was going on at the same time. That, we can live with that for the time being, okay? We can settle everything else later, and that's what I'm saying to Tabitha Eisner. Come on, man. What? Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a détente of sorts, and that's fine. That's good, I think, the reality is the level of beefing that has gone on between Kelly and Reed and Jones is such that they would not have integrity, in my mind, if either of them retreated from their positions. It would say to me, okay, you guys you really didn't believe the stuff you were saying about each other. So I think it's logical that they still be at odds, but I like you, I think it was smart that they at least put a lid on it becoming a public thing. So again, the question is, what Tabitha Eisner is doing, what is it going to accomplish? And I don't think it's going to accomplish anything that ultimately is going to be in the best interest of the Democratic Party in the short term or in the long term in the state of Alabama. And that's very frustrating because, again, we've got, even if you take off the table the fact that there's the potential here for us to win some statewide races, for me, as an Alabamian and as a voter, the number one priority, even above partisan victory, is we've got to keep Tommy Tuberville out of the governor's mansion. Yeah. And for me, that is not about partisanship, because I mean, look, we've had Republican governors before, so we've survived Republican governors, people that I didn't agree with and most Democrats didn't agree with. I don't think having a Republican governor is necessarily inherently dangerous to the state. It all depends on their rhetoric and the policies that they embrace. But with what Tommy Tuberville has been saying and the kinds of things that he has been doing, it is going to be damaging and I think dangerous to our state for him to be governor. We got to keep him out of that mansion. And this is not the time to engage in the kinds of activities that are going to detract from that effort, in my opinion.
Well, I just look, and I know people, well, you just want to cover it up. Come on. Who's reported more on Joe Reed and the party and the stuff, on both sides of this than I have. I mean, who's had? We've had Randy Kelly on, and he and I have gone back and forth, pretty strongly, okay, and it's been clear that I've disagreed with a lot of the things that he's done, okay, and I've disagreed with a lot of the decisions that he's made. but there's nothing's being covered up. All of this stuff has been reported previously, and what you're doing now is dragging it out into the into it right now. Is you're entering it into a hyper-focused atmosphere in which everyone is looking for an advantage, right? And what David said is exactly right. There's the goal. If you're working for the party here, the goal should be to get the Democrats elected, and I'll be honest, I've had some problems with the fact that the party has not been gung-ho enough, I felt like, in promoting Doug Jones and Philip Ensler and Ron Sparks and some of those guys. I feel like those folks have picked up some momentum, and they're going to need some help. They're going to need some help from the ADC crowd and everybody in the state to continue rolling along that way, and especially with get out the vote efforts and other stuff. I feel like there should have been more, but that's I'm quibbling with some really small things there. This is ready-made campaign material that's being put out against everybody. That nobody has done anything wrong on the Democratic side who is a candidate. No candidate has done anything wrong, but they're going to be punished for this. That's the problem. Yeah. You're punishing people who have no responsibility for what you're talking about. All right. That's the problem right now that we have. And you can talk about the party and all this and want it to be good. What's good for the party is for their candidates to be in office.
Yeah, exactly. And it makes it, I think it makes it harder. So then on August the 8th, that's when the reorganizing takes place, right? August the 8th. Mm-hmm. On August the 8th, I think there's just going to be a mess. That's what I'm expecting. I think you're going to go into this situation. It's not going to be smooth and efficient the way it needs to be, no matter who is elected or who isn't elected. It's going to be a mess. And I think people are going to leave there even more, divided because of everything that's led up to it. Yeah. People are going to leave with some, hurt feelings and some angry feelings, and it just doesn't help anything. Yeah,
I don't know. I get the sense that there is somewhat of a plan that has been kind of worked on between the two sides, and that maybe a surprise candidate for chairman may pop up, so we'll see. We'll see if that happens. I think if it's who I've heard, I think it would be a very, very wise move on behalf of the party and on behalf of everybody. I think he could kind of bridge a gap between some folks and maybe settles a lot of things. It's kind of honestly, I feel like it would have been in the Chris England kind of vein of things. I feel like it could be that sort of level-headed person with a lot of business connections, with a lot of connections in the state, and somebody who I think could really drive this thing. But we'll see. We'll see if that happens ultimately. All right, right wing nut, get out of here. Is that good with you?
All right.
How about our fine president, one Donald John Trump, creator and ender of wars, actually, I'm sorry, the same war. Creator and ender of the same war 30 plus times, who has apparently now confused transistors with transgenders. Did you see this, David?
You raised it with me. I had not heard about this. Explain it, because I was when you explained it to me, I thought that's really strange. What?
Yeah. He
what
apparently, they killed the CHIPS Act, which was heavily criticized by a lot of folks, because the CHIPS Act was such a good deal, especially for our tech companies and in terms of manufacturing. And so he went the other day on a rant about the CHIPS Act, and in doing so, he made the claim that the CHIPS Act required companies to hire transgender people. They required them to be transgenders. They wanted them to have a lot of these transgenders. Well, people have no idea what the hell he was talking about. And the only thing that they can assume is that the word transistor is in the bill. And so they believe that he had read the word transistors and confused that with transgenders, and got himself all wrapped in a ball over that whole thing. And so I know that several news organizations have reported the thing, and they've tried to ask the White House just what the hell he was talking about. And, it kind of ended up being like the Jesus photo in which he recreated himself as Jesus, and, in which he said he thought he was a doctor. But, it's one of those nonsensical things. And, along with we're going to bomb the hell out of Iran, and now we need $1 trillion to do so. It's just.
Well, I think what it shows me, this is just one more indication that all of the attacks that were made against Joe Biden about his gaffes and him being Sleepy Joe and all this other stuff, all of that stuff applies to Trump. All of it. All of it. Trump is no paragon of efficiency or capability. He's just as deficient as Biden was, if not more so.
I think more so.
It's just, and I'm not even getting into the politics or the policy now. I'm just talking about his presence as a president.
Right.
This guy falls asleep in meetings. He makes verbal. Yeah, ball games. His WWE fights on his White House lawn. He was asleep at that. This guy is as low energy as he used to say Biden was. He takes more golf trips and vacations than any other president that I'm aware of in my lifetime. I mean, he's he didn't even go to his own son's wedding. I mean, I think to play golf or something. I mean, he's just a really, the very thing that he has criticized others for being, he embodies all of that in the worst possible way and with a nasty attitude to boot. So I just think it's one more example of what a poor choice he's been for president, especially for people who say they have conservative values and all of this stuff. He doesn't embody a lot of that. Even he doesn't embody, but they had better choices. I just keep coming back to that. They had better choices, and they chose this guy.
Yeah, it's really disappointing to see what the White House has become under this guy, and to see what the office of the president has become under this guy. And to see the lowered expectations. And, to me, that's one of the worst things about this is the way that so many people on the right now talk, it's just, I'll give you an example. Tuberville's communications staff, whenever there's a story about, let's say the legal challenges now facing him, the residency challenges, the response from them is, they call Doug Jones DC Doug, this fake residency issue, it's all that kind of Trump speak. You know what I mean? That kind of, where you got to give somebody a nickname, and you've got to, you know what I mean? And it's such, it just, to me, it comes off as like, it's so childish and so, so juvenile and so beneath everything that you're supposed to be. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to be the cream of the crop people that we're electing to represent all of us. I mean, and look, I have no problem holding Democrats to the same standard with this as well. If they're doing that, and I get some of the things that Trump has said from time to time are fairly funny about people. I get that. I get the humorous thing, but your job's not to be humorous necessarily. Your job is to run the country, and I don't know, man. It just it's so beneath everybody.
I would love to hear from you an example of what he said that you thought is funny, because I haven't heard him say anything that I thought was funny. I've heard him say a lot of stupid, demeaning
some of the
things.
Funny things. Yeah.
What? I mean, give me one example. One example.
I think the stuff he said about Ted Cruz is pretty funny. You know what I mean? I mean, the stuff he said about Ted Cruz.
His father? About Ted Cruz's father?
About Ted being I can't remember what he said about Ted Cruz now, but I remember thinking that's a pretty funny shot. And look, it's rare. it's rare that he says anything funny. Most of the funny stuff that I find are things like the shark and the battery, and whether or not you're going to go down on the boat and be electrocuted by the battery in the water or eaten by the shark. And that's funny, you know what I mean? But it's unintentionally funny.
Well, right,
so, yeah.
Funny in a way that is like it's nonsensical.
Yeah,
funny.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's nonsensical.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. I mean, it's just it's just the ramblings of an insane person for the most part. But yeah, no, I just I think that it's just to me the hurtful, hateful things and the way that they talk about other people so often in those settings. It's now you hear so many people do it, and it's leaked over onto the other side of things as well. And I just think that's a shame.
Yeah, it's you think back, I can't think of one president in my lifetime that did not occupy that office with a level of dignity.
Right.
And even the one that I can think of who I think really did demean the office, and that was Bill Clinton, with the stuff he did with Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
At least when he stood in front of a podium and when he addressed the American people, he had dignity. He had dignity. All the Republicans of my lifetime, they had dignity. Even if I disagreed, and I did, with their policies and their worldview, they had dignity. Trump has not displayed dignity.
Yeah.
He's
you're right.
He's been a reality TV show president.
Yeah.
That's what he's been, and he's carried himself, like he was in a reality TV show in terms
He's
of
been a thug.
how he talks about people and treats people. It's really disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been a thug. He's been a thug in office, is what he's been, and it's been a shame. Yeah. It is demeaned it. It's removed a lot of the dignity of that office, and it's lowered our expectations of what a public servant should do, especially at that level. It really has. All righty, let's get out of here. Till next week. Be safe out there.